Most people think they know North Carolina. Maybe it's the beaches. Maybe it's college basketball. Maybe it's the slow drawl of a southern summer stretching across pine trees and mountain fog. But here's what most people miss. This is the state with a park that draws more visitors than the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone combined. Where a young student once walked 170 miles just for the chance to attend the nation's first public university. Where the first powered flight in human history lifted off into the sky and almost no one around thought it was worth writing about. North Carolina doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Its history is buried in quiet moments, overlooked places, and stories that should have changed everything but somehow didn't. Here are 50 facts that prove it. Fact 50. The word carved into the post. In 1587, 115 English settlers landed on Roanoke Island, North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England for supplies. War with Spain delayed him 3 years. When he returned in 1590, the settlement was empty. Houses dismantled. No bodies, no signs of violence. One word carved into a wooden post. Croatoan. The name of a nearby island and its people. The fate of the lost colony of Roanoke has never been explained. Fact 49. The morning nobody noticed. On December 17, 1903, at Kill Devil Hills in the Outer Banks, Orville Wright flew a machine he and his brother had built for 12 seconds. They flew 4 times that day. The longest flight was 59 seconds. A few local papers ran small items. The New York Times did not cover it. It took nearly 5 years for the public to understand what had happened on that beach. Fact 48. The pirate's neighbor. In the summer of 1718, Blackbeard accepted a royal pardon and moved to Bath, North Carolina. His neighbor was the colonial governor, Charles Eden. It was widely rumored and later supported by evidence that Eden received a share of Blackbeard's plunder in exchange for looking the other way. The state's own Chief Justice had stolen pirate goods found in his barn. When North Carolinians wanted Blackbeard dealt with, they had to ask Virginia for help. Fact 47. The ship that keeps giving. In November of 1996, researchers found a wreck in 20 feet of water off Beaufort Inlet, North Carolina. The following day was the 278th anniversary of Blackbeard's death. The wreck was his flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, lost in 1718. Archaeologists have been excavating the site ever since, and more than 400,000 artifacts have been recovered, including cannons, navigational instruments, and fragments of the lives of the men who sailed with him. Fact 46. The first to say it out loud. On April 12, 1776, 2 months before the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia, the colonial government of North Carolina passed the Halifax Resolves, becoming the first official governing body in America to formally authorize its delegates to vote for independence from Britain. North Carolina did not wait to see which way the wind blew. It moved first. The date has been on North Carolina's official seal since 1835. Fact 45. The doorstop that rewrote history. In 1799, a 12-year-old named Conrad Reed found a 17-pound yellow rock in a creek on his family's farm in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. His family had no idea what it was. For 3 years, his father used it as a doorstop. In 1802, a jeweler identified it as gold. It was the first documented gold find in the United States, launching America's first gold rush, predating the California rush by nearly 50 years. Conrad Reed's farm is still a state historic site. Fact 44. The mint that beat the government. In 1832, a German metalworker named Christopher Beckler opened a private mint in Rutherford County, North Carolina, and began minting the first $1 gold coins ever produced in the United States. Congress had established a federal mint in Charlotte, but it had not yet opened. Beckler filled the gap, producing over $2.5 million in gold coins over 2 decades. His coins were accepted as legal tender throughout the South. The federal government eventually caught up. Beckler had already been running for 20 years. Fact 43. America's largest home. In 1889, George Vanderbilt hired the most celebrated architect in the country and the designer of Central Park, and built a 250-room French Renaissance chateau on 8,000 acres in the Blue Ridge Mountains outside Asheville. The Biltmore Estate opened Christmas Eve, 1895, and remains the largest private home in the United States. It has its own winery, its own farm, and is still owned by Vanderbilt descendants. The estate draws more than 1 million visitors per year. Fact 42. The drink born at a pharmacy counter. In 1893, a pharmacist named Caleb Bradham began experimenting with a carbonated drink at his soda fountain in New Bern, North Carolina. He called it Brad's Drink. In 1898, he renamed it Pepsi-Cola. His original pharmacy has been restored as a working soda fountain and museum at the exact spot of its creation. New Bern is also the second oldest city in North Carolina, founded in 1710. You can still order a Pepsi from the counter where it was invented. Fact 41. The donut with a hole in the wall. In 1937, Vernon Rudolph bought a secret donut recipe from a New Orleans chef, rented a building in Winston-Salem, and started a wholesale bakery. The smell drifting outside drew pedestrians. Rudolph cut a hole in the wall and began passing hot donuts directly to people on the street. That building became the first Krispy Kreme. Today the brand operates in more than 30 countries. It all traces back to a hole in a wall in Winston-Salem. Fact 40. The soda that outlasted everyone. In 1917, a Salisbury, North Carolina businessman began producing a cherry-flavored soft drink called Cheerwine. Over the century that followed, Pepsi and Coca-Cola absorbed or destroyed nearly every regional soda brand in America. Cheerwine survived. It has been made in North Carolina continuously for over 100 years, without national distribution and without changing its formula. It is still independently owned by the same family. Regional loyalty to Cheerwine is the kind that gets passed down without explanation. Fact 39. The rub in 100 countries. In the 1890s, a pharmacist in Greensboro named Lunsford Richardson created a medicated salve for his son's croup, combining menthol with petroleum jelly. He named it Vicks VapoRub after his brother-in-law. During the 1918 flu pandemic, American families went through it by the jar. Its reputation spread globally. Today, Vicks VapoRub is sold in more than 100 countries and is among the most recognized consumer health products in the world. Fact 38. The plant Darwin loved most. Charles Darwin called it one of the most wonderful plants in the world. It eats insects and snaps shut in less than a second. The Venus flytrap grows wild in only one place on Earth, within approximately 100 miles of Wilmington, North Carolina. Not another continent, not another state. It appears in botanical gardens worldwide and starred in a Hollywood film. Its entire native range fits inside a single circle on the map. Fact 37. The most subscribed person on the internet. Jimmy Donaldson grew up in Greenville, North Carolina, and started a YouTube channel at 13. Posting from his bedroom, refining obsessively, he became the most subscribed individual creator in YouTube history. His channel, Mr. Beast, has more subscribers than the populations of most countries. He has given away millions of dollars on camera, built schools in Africa, and planted over 20 million trees. The most watched person on the internet grew up in eastern North Carolina and figured most of it out in his bedroom. Fact 36. The kid who got cut. Michael Jordan grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina. As a sophomore at Laney High School, he was cut from the varsity basketball team. The player widely considered the greatest of all time was told at 15 that he was not good enough. He worked, returned, and made the team. His career includes 6 championships, 5 MVP awards, and a transformation of how professional basketball was played and sold globally. Fact 35. The voice they almost silenced. Eunice Wayman was a classical piano prodigy raised in Tryon, North Carolina. In 1951, she applied to the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. She was rejected. She believed, and many historians agree, that race was the determining factor. She changed her name so her family would not know she was playing in jazz clubs. The name she chose was Nina Simone. The music she made with the voice they overlooked became some of the most important of the 20th century. Fact 34. The preacher from Charlotte. Billy Graham was born on a dairy farm outside Charlotte in 1918 and became the most influential Protestant evangelist in American history. He preached to an estimated 215 million people in 185 countries. Every president from Truman to Obama sought his counsel. He was buried in Charlotte in 2018, a mile from where he was born. Fact 33. The planetarium that saved Apollo. From the early 1960s through 1975, NASA sent all of its Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and Skylab astronauts to Moorhead Planetarium at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill to train in celestial navigation. James Lovell, commander of Apollo 13, credited this training with helping his crew plot a safe course home after onboard systems failed. When lightning struck Apollo 12 right after liftoff and knocked out navigation, the astronauts used their Moorhead training to realign the systems from orbit. Fact 32. The lighthouse that walked. Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, built in 1870, is the tallest brick lighthouse in the United States at 208 feet. By the 1990s, the Atlantic shoreline had eroded to within feet of its base. In 1999, engineers moved the entire structure 2,900 feet inland on a track system in 23 days without damaging it. It is the largest lighthouse relocation in history. Fact 31. The mountain that claimed its measurer. Mount Mitchell, at 6,684 feet, is the highest peak east of the Mississippi River. It is named after Elisha Mitchell, a UNC professor who spent years proving the Black Mountains were the tallest in the eastern United States. In 1857, he returned to verify his measurements, slipped, fell into a waterfall pool, and drowned. He was buried at the summit. He is still there, at the top of the mountain he proved was the highest. Fact 30. The park that outvisits everything. Great Smoky Mountains National Park receives more visitors each year than the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone combined, over 12 million people per year. Admission is free, which helps. But it is also 500,000 acres of ancient terrain with more tree species than all of northern Europe. It is not the most famous national park in America. It is the most visited, by a distance. Fact 29. The Graveyard of the Atlantic. The Outer Banks sit atop Diamond Shoals, where the warm Gulf Stream meets the cold Labrador Current, creating some of the most unpredictable water on the eastern seaboard. Over 5,000 ships have sunk in these waters. The area is called the Graveyard of the Atlantic, and more than half of those wrecks remain on the bottom. The same coastline that drowned 5,000 ships is also where, in 1903, humanity first figured out how to fly. Fact 28. The Bridge That Sways. Grandfather Mountain in the Blue Ridge sits at 5,946 feet above sea level. The United Nations designated it a biosphere reserve for its extraordinary biodiversity. At its summit, spanning a 228-foot chasm between two rocky peaks, hangs the mile-high swinging bridge, the highest suspension footbridge in the United States. It sways in the wind. On clear days, visitors can see 4 states. Grandfather Mountain has been there for over 300 million years. The bridge has been there since 1952. Fact 27. The town that disappeared overnight. In the early 1970s, the town of Judson, North Carolina sat quietly along the Little Tennessee River in the mountains. Then the federal government flooded it. Fontana Dam, built in secret during World War II, displaced entire communities to create the lake behind it. Judson Cemetery remained above water, but the access road was washed out. The government promised to build a new one so families could visit the graves. They never did. Today, the only way to reach it is by boat or a long hike through the mountains. Once a year, the National Park Service ferries families across the lake to visit what remains. The town is gone. The graves are not. Fact 26. The plane that vanished in plain sight. In January of 1942, a United States Navy patrol plane disappeared off the coast of North Carolina during World War II. There was no distress call, no wreckage found. The area was heavily patrolled, yet the aircraft and its crew were never recovered. The waters off North Carolina were a major battleground during the war, where German U-boats sank dozens of ships within sight of the shoreline. Some wrecks have been found decades later. Others, like this one, have never been located. The ocean off North Carolina does not give everything back. Fact 25. The battle nobody expected. In April of 1864, Confederate forces used one of the first ironclad warships in the South to attack Union positions along the Roanoke River at the Battle of Plymouth. The ship, called the CSS Albemarle, changed the balance instantly. Wooden Union gunboats were no match. The town fell. It was one of the few moments in the Civil War where new technology completely shifted the outcome overnight. Fact 24. The island where English disappeared. Roanoke was not the only mystery. Nearby Hatteras Island holds one of the strongest clues to what may have happened. Archaeological evidence suggests that at least some of the lost colony settlers may have integrated with local Croatoan tribes rather than perishing. English artifacts have been found in areas where they were never supposed to be. If true, the first English colony in America did not vanish. It adapted, blended, and disappeared into another culture entirely. The mystery may not be where they went. It may be who they became. Fact 23. The road that almost never existed. The Blue Ridge Parkway feels inevitable now, but it almost did not happen in North Carolina at all. When it was first proposed during the Great Depression, Tennessee lobbied heavily to have the route run through their side of the mountains instead. North Carolina fought to keep it, arguing its terrain offered better views. The decision went North Carolina's way. Today, the Parkway defines the identity of the region. One routing decision changed the economic future of an entire section of the state. Fact 22. The storm that rewrote the coastline. In September of 1933, a hurricane struck the Outer Banks with enough force to carve new inlets through the barrier islands, permanently reshaping the coastline. Entire sections of land were split apart overnight. Some villages were cut off completely. Roads vanished. The geography of North Carolina's coast is not fixed. It is constantly being rewritten by storms. What exists on the map today may not exist the same way in 100 years. Fact 21. The tree on the White House lawn. North Carolina grows more Christmas trees than any state except Oregon. Its Fraser fir, raised in the western mountain counties, has been chosen as the White House Christmas tree 13 times, more than any other species. The mountain altitude and cool growing conditions produce a tree with strong branches, a perfect shape, and needles that hold. About 1,300 farms in the state grow Christmas trees. Fact 20. The sweet potato state. North Carolina produces approximately 60% of all sweet potatoes grown in the United States. The sandy soils of the coastal plain create conditions the crop prefers above almost anywhere else in the country. The sweet potato is the official state vegetable. When you order sweet potato pie, sweet potato casserole, or sweet potato fries at a restaurant in the American South, the odds are strong that it came from North Carolina soil. Fact 19. The first public university to open its doors. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill opened its doors to students in 1795, making it the first public university in the United States to actually begin instruction. The first student to enroll, Hinton James, walked 170 miles from Wilmington to get there. He arrived 8 days before any other students and remained the only student for 2 weeks. The university he walked to now has nearly 30,000 students. Fact 18. The town that freed people built. In 1865, formerly enslaved men and women settled on land along the Tar River in eastern North Carolina and called it Freedom Hill. In 1885, they formally incorporated it as the town of Princeville, making it the oldest municipality incorporated by African Americans in the United States. The town has flooded repeatedly, most catastrophically during Hurricane Floyd in 1999. Each time, residents rebuilt in place. Fact 17. The triangle between three cities. Research Triangle Park, situated between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill on 7,000 acres of central North Carolina farmland, is the largest research park in the United States. Established in 1959, it is now home to over 300 companies employing more than 65,000 people, including IBM, Cisco, Biogen, and GlaxoSmithKline. In 2022 and 23, North Carolina was named the top state for business in the country. A significant portion of that reputation traces back to this park. Fact 16. The dialect Shakespeare would recognize. In the isolated hollows of the Appalachian Mountains in western North Carolina, a dialect survives that linguists have studied for over a century. The Scots, Irish, and English settlers who arrived in the 1700s were cut off by terrain for generations, and their language did not evolve the way American English did elsewhere. Words, phrases, and constructions that disappeared from mainstream English in the 1600s are still in everyday use. The mountains did not just preserve geology, they preserved the language. Fact 15. The tooth on the beach. The state fossil of North Carolina is the tooth of a megalodon, the largest shark that ever lived. Megalodons grew to approximately 50 or 60 feet and lived until roughly 3.5 million years ago. Their teeth, some as large as a human hand, still wash up on North Carolina beaches regularly. The coastal waters were once shallow, warm seas, dense with megalodon remains. Beachcombers find them in the surf every year. Fact 14. The insult they kept. The nickname Tar Heel began as a derogatory term for the barefoot workers who extracted tar from North Carolina's colonial forests, staining their feet black. During the Civil War, North Carolina soldiers began calling themselves Tar Heels defiantly, stripping the insult of its shame and turning it into a badge of toughness. The state has been the Tar Heel state ever since. It is one of the cleaner examples in American history of a community taking someone else's contempt and wearing it home. Fact 13. The argument on the license plate. North Carolina plates read, "First in Flight." Ohio plates read, "Birthplace of Aviation." Both are right about different parts of the same story. The Wright brothers were born in Ohio, educated in Ohio, built their aircraft in Dayton. They chose Kill Devil Hills for its reliable coastal winds and soft sand. The first powered flight happened on North Carolina ground. Ohio supplied the machine. North Carolina supplied the physics. The dispute has never been resolved. Fact 12. The first English child born in the New World. The lost colony left one more name behind. Virginia Dare was born August 18, 1587, on Roanoke Island, the granddaughter of the colony's governor and the first English child born in what would become the United States. She was 9 days old when her grandfather sailed to England for supplies. She was one of the 115 people who vanished before he returned. She has never been found. Her birth and disappearance bookend the oldest unsolved mystery in American colonial history. Fact 11. The birthplace of every putt-putt course. In 1954, a man named Don Clayton in Fayetteville, North Carolina, frustrated with the chaotic layout of existing miniature golf courses, designed and built the first standardized, skill-based miniature golf course. He called it Putt-Putt and franchised the concept. Other companies copied the format. There are now tens of thousands of miniature golf courses around the world. Every single one traces back, at least conceptually, to a man in Fayetteville who simply thought it could be done better. Fact 10. The oldest vine in America. On Roanoke Island, North Carolina, a grapevine is still growing that may be over 400 years old. Sir Walter Raleigh's explorers wrote about it in the 1580s. It is a scuppernong, a variety of muscadine grape native to the Carolinas, and it is believed to be the oldest cultivated grapevine in the United States. The lost colonists who arrived in 1587 would have known it. It outlived them and everyone who came after. North Carolina's first permanent residents are long gone. The vine is not. Fact 9. The saxophonist from High Point. John Coltrane was born in Hamlet, North Carolina in 1926 and grew up in High Point, where he learned clarinet and saxophone at William Penn High School. He left for Philadelphia at 17 and never came back. In 20 years of professional recording, his work was so transformative that in 2007 he received a special Pulitzer Prize, the first ever awarded for jazz. A Love Supreme, recorded in a single session in 1965, is considered one of the greatest recordings in history. Fact 8. The dam they built in secret. 9 days after Pearl Harbor, Congress authorized the construction of Fontana Dam in a remote mountain gorge in western North Carolina. Families were told the dam would power aluminum production for the war. That was true, but incomplete. Fontana Dam also secretly powered the Manhattan Project's nuclear research at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. 6,000 workers built it around the clock over 3 years. At 480 feet tall, it remains the highest dam east of the Rocky Mountains. The families who gave up their land were never told what it was really for. Fact 7. More salamanders than anywhere. North Carolina has more species of salamander than any other place in North America. Over 60 species have been documented, concentrated in the southern Appalachians, where ancient terrain and layered elevation zones create conditions found almost nowhere else on the continent. Salamanders are among the most sensitive indicators of environmental health in the world. The fact that so many thrive here says something about what these mountains have managed to hold on to. Fact 6. The mountains that predate everything. The Appalachian Mountains in western North Carolina are approximately 300 million years old. They predate dinosaurs by roughly 70 million years. They predate the Atlantic Ocean, which did not exist when the Appalachians formed. They predate fish having bones. When they were new, they stood higher than the Himalayas. 300 million years of erosion produced what you see today. Every other thing discussed in this video happened in, around, on top of, or because of these mountains. Fact 5. The parkway most people miss. The Blue Ridge Parkway runs 469 miles along the spine of the Appalachians through Virginia and North Carolina. It is the most visited road in the National Park System, with more than 15 million visitors per year. No commercial vehicles, no billboards. Speed limit 45. Built during the Depression as a public works project and completed over 5 decades. People drive it slowly on purpose. That is the entire point. Fact 4. The horses nobody brought. On the barrier islands of North Carolina's Outer Banks, small herds of wild horses have roamed freely for over 500 years. DNA testing has confirmed they are direct descendants of colonial Spanish Mustangs brought to the Americas in the 1500s. The most likely origin: Spanish ships ran aground on the Diamond Shoals and jettisoned their livestock, or failed colonial settlements left their horses behind when they evacuated. Either way, the horses made the Outer Banks their home and never left. In 1926, National Geographic estimated 6,000 of them on the islands. Around 200 remain today. Fact 3. The bracket that starts here. For decades, North Carolina has produced more NBA talent per capita than almost any other state. Michael Jordan from Wilmington, Stephen Curry from Charlotte, James Worthy from Gastonia, John Wall from Raleigh. And the rivalry between the University of North Carolina and Duke, separated by 8 miles, is the most intense in college basketball. Every March when the tournament begins, North Carolina is at the center of it. The state did not just produce players, it produced the obsession. Fact 2. The town that keeps coming back. Princeville, the oldest African-American incorporated municipality in the United States, sits on low land by the Tar River and has paid for that location repeatedly. Hurricane Floyd in 1999 flooded it to the rooftops. Hurricane Matthew in 2016 flooded it again. Each time, the question was raised: should Princeville move? Each time, residents rebuilt where they were. Freedom Hill is not just an address. The decision to stay is made every time the water rises. Fact 1. The people who never left. When the federal government forced the Cherokee removal in 1838, the event known as the Trail of Tears, roughly 1,000 Cherokee people hid deep in the mountains of western North Carolina and refused to go. Some were sheltered by white neighbors. Some held out in terrain the government could not easily reach. After years of resistance and negotiation, their right to remain was secured. Their descendants, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, still live in those same mountains today. They are the only federally recognized tribe in the Southeast that never relocated. The people who named these mountains never left them. North Carolina is still theirs too. North Carolina is the oldest mountains and the youngest coastline, the birthplace of flight and the oldest American mystery, and home to people who have been holding their ground in these mountains for a very long time. Which fact surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. We read all of them. If this video earned your time, don't forget to like and subscribe to help this channel explore new places. Next time on the Hidden Atlas, we are heading somewhere new. Until then, keep wondering and keep your eyes open for the hidden corners of our world.